Hello, hello. Let's see if this is working. It takes a little bit of time from this to actually start. But I'm starting early today. It's February 29th. Let me turn this down so it doesn't like start echoing like crazy. I just want to make sure it's working. But it's February 29th, which is a very special day. I think it happens every 4 years. It's like part of the leap year thing, right? Um, really, really neat. Let's make sure this is working. There we go. All right, we're working. We're cooking. I see people already here. I appreciate you joining. This is gonna be a fun one. We're just doing Q&A today. Nothing crazy, nothing wild. This isn't one of my milestone ones where I'm gonna be playing guitar, doing voices, or singing for you guys or anything. I'm just answering questions. That's it. Let me move some stuff real quick because I need to pull this laptop over so that I can see the questions. I'm going to tell you exactly how this is going to go. I am just going to be in the chat, reading the chat. That is essentially all we're going to be doing here. Now, let me make sure this chat's working. Let me make sure. Computer's being weird. It's not showing the chat over here. Let me go to this other one. Actually, no. Let me go to this other thing. Give me 1 sec, because I need to be able to see the comments or the questions. Just give me 1 second. I do apologize. But how's everybody doing? February 29th. What a special day. But let's come over here. Let's go to the live. Come right here. Let's see if that'll do it. Oh, there it is. Okay, perfect. All right, we got everything we need. I see people joining. That's great. Really appreciate you guys being here. Why is it doing this? It's really messing with me today. This thing is actually messing with me. Because now I can't see it again. This is very, very odd. Let me go to live. Go to this one. There we go. All right, I see people. All right, sorry for the confusion. But we're rocking and rolling now. Let's get going. Like I was saying before, this is just Q&A time. You can ask me anything. You can genuinely ask me anything. It doesn't mean I'll answer it, but you can ask anything you'd like. And then there you go. We'll start answering questions. We'll start talking. I see a bunch of questions already. Sometimes I miss questions, but don't spam the comments because some people do that and it just, I can't see other questions. It's not fun. So let's get going. Okay, won't be awake. That's all right. Discount code for the website. If you're talking about Analyst Builder, I'll put one in the I'll put it in the I'll put one in the chat real quick. Analyst Builder coupon code. This is AB 20 off. If you use that code real quick, you get 20% off everything. About to be releasing my full Tableau course over there. That's not what this is this for. It's just that guy was talking about it. All right, let's keep going. What happened to the live? The live is happening. All right, here's an actual question. How's the job market currently for data analysts with 1 year of work experience? The job market isn't very great right now. It's, you see layoffs a lot of places. I still know people who are getting hired. I still know companies are hiring, but you absolutely are, you're seeing a lot more layoffs. You're seeing a little bit slowdown in hiring. All of this stems back, if you go and talk to most people, it all stems back from that huge surge that they had of hiring back in like 2000 to 2000, or not 2000, 2020 to 2022. There was a huge surge, and employees were like a commodity. They were just like hoarding employees because that was like that at that time. And so now they're slowly starting to reduce their work staff in certain areas. And that's not super shocking. And if you go back and you really look at like the cyclical pattern of hiring in tech, and just like for people in this kind of field, there's a lot of patterns to it. Right now, we're kind of on this slightly downhill wave, but there was a lot more hiring than there has been firing in the past several years just because of that huge surge. So right now, it's not great, if I'm being honest. It's not great. Even for a little bit of work experience, there's just a lot of people out there. Biggest recommendation is try to get referrals, try to, use your network, work with recruiters. If you already have experience, that's really helpful. It's just, something to think about. Joining all the way from South Sudan, awesome, in Africa, and I'm using your videos to study. Is it possible to mentor someone? I used to have a mentorship program. I worked with over like 200 people one-on-one, but as my channel grew and as I started getting promoted in my actual work, I just didn't have the time anymore. And at one point I had like 10 mentees at a time. And then when one mentee would drop off, I'd take on another one. And I loved it. I absolutely loved it. But I just could not keep up. And, it does take a lot to run that kind of thing. So I don't do that anymore. What I did was I created Analyst Builder because people were paying me for those mentorships. I did about I think it was $75 a session for an hour. I thought that was very affordable. But some people were doing it for 6 months, a year, and I was helping them with everything, all their questions. And some people got jobs and then still wanted to work with me. But that's why I created Analyst Builder, was so that I could mentor everybody and a lot more in depth, and have everything in one place. And so, yeah, that's why I created Analyst Builder, and I just don't do the individual mentorships right now. But I do want to get back to that in the future. Let's see. It's awesome. It's an awesome leap year day. Yeah, it's a leap year day, which is really neat. It's February 29th. It only comes around once every 4 years. So it's really neat. This question, I just skipped a bunch of people. Sorry. Hey, Alex, would going for a data analyst job still be a good decision when AI is likely to steal our jobs? That's a genuine question. I think that as long as there are businesses, as long as there is data, as long as there are decisions being made with that data analysts are here to stay. Even with the help of AI. I mean, AI is a great tool, but as most people in the past year have seen, there's a lot of limitations to it and what you can do. Now, over the next several years, things will improve, things will get better. But if you've looked at like Microsoft Copilot, OpenAI's ChatGPT data analyst thing, there's a lot of limitations and a lot of things that it doesn't do super well. And so there's still 100% need for data analysts in the foreseeable future. With everything in the tech world, we're going to need to adapt to changing technologies, to changing, workflows and tech stacks and all these different things. So I really see, data analysis transforming over the next several years. You just kind of got to ride that wave, learn what you need to learn the basics. And as AI and as cloud platforms and all these different systems improve and change, you change with it. That is what I genuinely believe. What's the difference between a data analyst and a data scientist? Both roles look kind of similar. The roles are somewhat similar. I have a few videos that you can watch on the differences. The biggest difference is that typically data analysts are working with past data to look at previous trends. Most data analysts are working with like ad hoc analysis, where you're looking at stuff from the past, and a lot of ad hoc analysis. Data scientists are usually trying to project forward. So using previous data to project forward. Data analysts typically don't do a ton of projection. Some roles you might, but not typically. You're doing a lot of reporting on here's what our finances looked like this year, compared to last year, year over year, month over month, change, etc. Whereas data scientists aren't working with a lot of that. The overlap is a lot of them will use SQL, Python, Excel. That's pretty standard. Each of them will do data cleaning. But then what they use the data for, data scientists are going to do a lot more data modeling, and they're going to have to do a lot more data transformation than what data analysts are going to do. So it's a little bit more technical in that sense. But similar, but typically data scientists do get paid a little bit more for that actual technical experience. The next question is from Syed Mohammed. Thank you so much for the donation. You did not have to do that. Just appreciate it though. It says, hi, do have a job, but always looking for, he does have it says, I do. So it says, hi, I do have a job, but always looking for a better job. You lived in Dallas. Can you suggest some best places for in-person networking events in Dallas? I did live in Dallas. Good catch. Yeah, I lived in Dallas for 5 years. That's where I got my start in data. I highly recommend metropolitan areas if you're trying to like break into tech, because the online marketplace with all the remote jobs are very competitive because everyone can apply for them anywhere in the world. In-person or location-based jobs are somewhat easier to get because you're there and other people can't apply for them. Networking, I didn't really do much networking. unfortunately, I really didn't, although there were meetups in Dallas that I became aware of after. I never ever went. So unfortunately, I don't have any info on that. Trying to think of what might be helpful. The Dallas scene is really good though for tech workers. Like, I was working at Amerisource Bergen, which they just changed their name to something else. But if you look them up, you'll see their name. But there's a lot of car manufacturers like Toyota and Honda and Volvo and a bunch of big car companies that hire a lot of data analysts out there. And then banking is huge in Dallas. So if you look at USAA, Citi, Chase, they all have big data analyst people who are working with their business analytics and a ton of other people who I know have gotten hired over there. So I wish I could be more helpful. I actually don't know much meetup stuff out there. Is Python or React a must to learn to become a data analyst? No, neither of them are necessities. React, I definitely don't think so. If you're talking about the React that I'm thinking of, that's like a framework for for backend for like websites. Maybe I need to look that up. Or let me look React. I'm going to Google this real quick. Yeah, it's for web applications. It's like Python Flask and React to build web applications. No, you don't. You definitely don't need that. You definitely don't. But it could be useful to learn. Let me go back. Go back. Could be useful to learn, but Python is not even a must. The market has changed a little bit. Sorry, I got some things down here. The market has changed a little bit. You need to be more solid in certain skills, but I started out only knowing Excel in my first data analyst job at like the nonprofit. But then SQL and Excel were what really drove a lot of my career forward, and it's still super relevant today. But then I really do recommend knowing some cloud applications. I really recommend knowing specifically AWS and Azure. Google Cloud Platform is used at some companies, but I hate Google Cloud. I don't like it as much. Sorry, Google. I don't like it as much. I don't recommend learning that one. I think Azure, since it's Microsoft, a lot of companies are Microsoft shop, learn those. Those three things, and then Tableau or Power BI. You learn those things. Excuse me. You're gonna have a really good foundation. Let's see. How to learn English to crack interview or ace in normal communication. If you don't know English or if it's not your first language, just learning English is really tough because English is a really difficult language, honestly. But I think my biggest recommendation would be to talk to people or even do mock interviews with friends or people that you may know. But go into interviews. Like actually try to get an interview and see if you can do that because you might fail. It's a high possibility if your English isn't like super strong and you're applying for an English job that you may fail. Another thing is, and this is just, I have a course on interviewing in MySQL, interviewing in, so like for SQL interviews, and then a course for interviewing in Python. Both of those are, I mean, all in English because I made them. And so those might be helpful for you as well. Hi, Alex, just completed your data analyst bootcamp, woohoo, a few days ago, and it was really helpful for clearing many of my doubts. I'm so happy to hear that. Awesome, awesome resource, for sure, really recommend it. Let's see. Okan G says, please, you said stuff is free and it's not free. Well, all of my YouTube stuff is free. This Q&A is free. I do have a platform where it's all of my full length courses and it has like a questions page to prepare for technical interviews. That is not free. Although there is a free section in the questions, there's free questions on there. So you can go and try out the free questions. That is free. But no, I have, there's a ton of hosting fees, cloud fee, because we use AWS, cloud platform fees. I have a whole team who helps me run Analyst Builder. I can't make it free, unfortunately. It is actually quite expensive to run month to month. Let's see, one sec. How do you recommend for new analysts to be valued for skills at a job? Projects, at least to get the job. Like you need projects to really showcase that you know how to do things, and it really challenges you because you have to build things, and when you actually start building things, you figure out, you work through issues, which is really important, genuinely. So really, really important. But when you're actually on the job, when you're first starting out, you're not gonna be super valuable. You're gonna take a while to really understand their business use cases for their data. their clients, their stakeholders, understanding all their tables and databases and data sources, because it could be sitting not in a database, but in a ton of other areas. So you're not going to be super valuable right away. It just takes time. Let's see. I'm just looking in here for questions. I'm slightly backed up, but not much. Like in my nose, I have like a little bit of congestion, and so that's all right. Brian said, I'm trying to find my first job as a data analyst. However, I see some offers that require 3 or more years of experience. How can I find my first job? Now that happens everywhere in the world, unfortunately. Some places it's worse. I've heard a lot of anecdotal stories where they're like, in India, it's much worse. And that may be true. I don't know the India market as much. But then in places like Europe, in Canada, in the United States, it's still not great because that happens a lot. But my recommendation is those years of experience is a guideline. As with the whole job description, if you have a majority of what they're looking for, apply. Your resume, it needs to be able to get through that first step. You need to be good at communication, and you need to build projects to kind of show that experience. But if you get into an interview and you really talk well and you interview well, and you cannot, I don't want to say convince them that you're a good employee, but just really show like, hey, I don't have 3 years of experience, but I know I can do this job. If you really convey that, then a lot of times, a lot of companies will be willing to take a chance if they, got a good vibe from you. So I would just apply anyways. That's what I would say. This one says, this is from Heather. I recently graduated from Coursera Data Analytics, and I'm searching for entry level. What suggestions do you have to overcome the lack of jobs available versus the experience level? That's a great question. A lot of people, they start out with courses, and then they gravitate to projects, and then they are like, okay, I'm ready to apply, get that first job to start getting some, actual experience. And that's how it should be. Sorry, I thought my wife texted me. That's how it should be. Unless you went straight from like a bachelor's or a master's program and then you're graduating into getting a job. Here's what I recommend. One, create a great resume. Start reaching out to connections who work at companies. Doesn't matter what company it is. Well, it does. But if they're working at a bank, reach out to them. If they're working at a construction place, reach out to them, because a lot of these places have some type of analytics or data departments. It may not be called a data analyst, but it could be really relevant. So that's like the first step. Next thing is work with as many recruiters as you can. If you have a good resume, you should be, I kid you not, even back in the day when I started in 2017, which is over 7 years ago now, it was still not an easy job market, right? It was better than it is now, much better. But I had no experience, and I was like, I had to fight. I had to like grind it out. I was working with like 7 or 8 recruiters at a time. And a lot of them wouldn't talk to me or get back to me, or they would ignore my emails and my calls. But you just got to be kind of shameless. You just have to reach out time and time again. And especially in this market, I mean, you have to do what you have to do. Precious said, hello, Alex. I just made my portfolio website using your video. Awesome. Thank you so much. I tagged you on LinkedIn. That's super cool. If I see it, I'll be sure to like it or make some comment on it. That's really awesome. Yeah, the using GitHub pages for your, it's a free website, super smart. Most people are like paying for Wix or using the free Wix, and it doesn't look as good. It's easier to make because you're not having to deal with the code of HTML and hosting it on GitHub pages. But just, it's awesome. Do you recommend a CompTIA data certificate? No, I don't. Rodrigo asked, oh, wait, sorry. Sunil asked a previous question. What's the difference between data models and merge query options in Power BI? I need to go look exactly the differences, but if you're talking about just like data modeling in general, that's usually referring to how the data is all tied together, and then how it represents it when you start using it in the Power BI visualizations. And then you have the merge query options in Power BI. I'm sure I know what that is. I'm just, off the top of my head, I can't remember the difference between that and the data models. because obviously merge queries, talking about merging data together and different tables together. I'm sure maybe they work hand in hand. On the top of my head, I don't remember. I haven't used Power BI professionally for like 2 years. And so I really need to dig back into Power BI because they've made some upgrades and some changes. But I've been using more Tableau and Looker than Power BI recently, at least in the past like year and a half. Rodrigo asked a question. I'm from Argentina. I'm wondering if it exists a chance to get a job of data analyst overseas remotely. So if you're wanting to stay in your country or wherever you are, and this, I've worked with a lot of people from all over the world for this exact question, which is I'm living in X. I want to work for a company in, let's say, America, but I want to stay where I am. I just want to work remote. One, it's very possible. I worked with people who had 0 experience and were able to get jobs. But here's what they did, and here's how they were successful, and kind of what I found to be the most successful. One is you can do freelancing. Freelancing is just where you go on job boards and you kind of position yourself for a certain niche. You say, hey, I'm really good at SQL. I'm willing to do SQL, write SQL queries, clean up SQL code. It could even be as simple as something like Excel pivot tables or whatever. Whatever you're good at, you can market yourself on these websites like Fiverr and Upwork and other ones. Then there is the better option. And this is a little bit tougher to do, of course, because you have to interview for it. But there are companies like Accenture. There are companies like TCS, which is Tata Consulting Services. These are companies that hire people from other parts of the world. They get them as consultants, and then they hire them out to companies all over the world. But we used to hire my old company on my team. I had a team of about 7 people. 4 of those people were through Accenture. We eventually switched to TCS, and then we switched to another one. That wasn't my decision. That was just a company-wide or department-wide decision. But we would hire people. So we had people from Lithuania. We had people in Australia. We had people in, one guy in India. Two guys from India. And that was and I think we had to fire one guy and hire another guy, but I can't remember where we hired him from. But we hired from all over the world through these consulting companies. And they pay really well. And so I do recommend looking into those. Let me see. So this question says, how to clear round for data analyst role for my on-campus was, my on-campus was coming soon. I am BTech 3rd year, artificial intelligence, data science. For tech round, I have to learn a specific programming language. I think what he's saying is how do you get past those technical interview rounds? I have been through a lot, and I've conducted a lot because I was on the hiring team for like 3 years, and then I was a hiring manager. And I conducted technical interviews the whole time. That was my part to play on the hiring team. To pass the interviews, really, it's not as difficult as for most companies as you make it out to be. For most companies, if you're hiring for entry or mid-level, you're doing some type of SQL technical interview, which is a whiteboarding where they're going to give you a database or some simulated sandbox database, or they're just going to give you a query with and just have you walk through it like in your head. And they say, hey, here's what we're needing you to write. The only reason they do that is to make sure you know what you're talking about. You're not some newbie with SQL and they need someone with 3 years experience because it's complex stuff they're working with. So to pass that, you should practice. That is a big portion of my platform, analystbuilder.com, which is you can go and practice. There's a whole questions page to practice for these technical interviews, whiteboarding. There is another piece to these technical interview though, is the general technical interviews. This is I will say is more difficult. And this is the piece that most people fail at. You don't want to fail at the whiteboarding. You need to be able to pass that. That's a bad sign if you can't pass that. That's kind of like the first roadblock. The second piece is the general technical interviews. Now, not everybody conducts these the exact same way, but they're going to give you some type of hypothetical scenario or some type of question surrounding the technical piece of your job. For example, if it's SQL. I keep referencing SQL because that's the biggest one that you're going to get for data analysis, is technical questions in SQL. So they're going to ask you, they're going to say, hey, what do you do when you have database in this SQL, a SQL database over here, and you have a database and a SQL database over here? How are you going to combine that data? Well, in almost every language, it's not that hard to do. You just need to specify when you're joining it together. Oh, my thing went off. I thought it stopped working. There's an easy way to combine it, and you need to walk through how to do that. And so it takes a little bit of almost like experience to know that it's not that hard to do. And if you're like, oh, I don't think you can do that, well, then they're going to be like, okay, this guy's never used real production data before. Or they're going to ask you about, let's say you have really dirty data. What's your process for cleaning it? Again, I have a whole course. It's called the SQL Interview Crash Course on Analyst Builder, made specifically for that. It has general technical interview questions. I'm not here to promote it. I'm just saying it's helpful. So if you think that would be useful to you, I think you should take it. The questions, Mind Facts said, hi, Alex, how are you? Love from India. Love back from the United States. Really appreciate you watching. Hugh Maria Yak said, hi, this is Hugh. Hey, Hugh. Tableau or Power BI for data scientists, which one should be learned first? Either one is perfectly fine. I'm gonna give you my anecdotal experience. This is my experience. I've used both Tableau and Power BI in production environments at different companies. I personally think Power BI is a little bit better, just for various purposes of how they do. It's just how they do things and how it connects to a lot of different systems. I think it's better. And I'm not going to dive into all that because I could talk about that a lot. I think, though, that Tableau is easier to learn as a beginner because the UI is just a little bit more user-friendly, and things just flow a little bit easier in Tableau. That's just my opinion. But I've used both. I think for data scientists, I think that either is fine. And there are some visualization differences in both, so it depends on, I guess, what you're trying to visualize as a data scientist. But again, I worked with data scientists a lot, and they use Power BI, and they get a lot of use out of it. I've worked a little bit with data scientists with with Tableau, and it seemed fine as well. So honestly, either. I just prefer Power BI myself. But I recommend people learn Tableau first because I think it's easier for people to really get into and understand better. And then you transfer to Power BI, and it's like it's not that hard to do that. Let me see. I forgot to get water. I may have to run and get some water at some point. My mom's texting me. Let me see. I have a reflection on my glasses. My mom's texting me. Why is she? My mom's in here somewhere. Hey, Mom. My mom's texting me. I have a good reflection. Okay, it's not like a bad reflection. That's good. What do I think about Quarto? Oh, geez. I'm pretty sure I've seen this before. Open source for publishing, book slides, supports Python art. I don't know much about it. I know I've seen it out there in the wild before, but I don't remember. Sorry. Do you need domain knowledge to be a data analyst, or isn't it necessary? All right, I love domain knowledge questions because I'm very passionate about domain knowledge. You could go your entire career knowing the basics of domain knowledge, just skipping around from different domains to different domains. You're in healthcare this year, next year you're in finance, next year you're in, you're doing consulting for marketing. It doesn't matter. You're going to get bits and pieces of domain knowledge wherever you're working. You will find domain knowledge. The biggest thing I will say is if you want to go farther in your career, if you want to make it to the senior level, you want to become a manager, a senior manager, a VP or whatever. Oh, thanks, baby. My wife was watching. She got me some water. Thanks, baby. Love you. That was really sweet. That was really sweet of her. I didn't know she was watching this. Shout out to the wife. So if you want to get to those next levels, domain knowledge becomes increasingly important. Now your skill level has to match. You have to increase your skill level, be able to do really more technical things as you go. But if you don't know the ins and outs of whatever domain you're in, your skill level isn't going to be crazy helpful. because understanding the data, how it comes in, the usefulness of it, how it's used in your products, how it's used in your visualizations, becomes more and more and more and more and more important. So you can get far. You can even get up to the senior level with none of it, but it's hard to get past that until you really know some type of domain. So that's just my take on it. I could talk about that. I actually have a few videos on that, I think. Okay, let's keep going. Taha Nafal said, "Hi Alex, I got blessed and found a job as a performance analyst before 2 months. Thanks to you and your videos. I'm so happy to hear that. Congrats. Awesome work." Let's see. Do we need to know machine learning for data analyst job? No. I think data science is getting more automated. It's funny because I actually thought data science was going to be more important as AI got bigger, but AI is actually simplifying some of the AI data science stuff with all the models and stuff. It is simplifying things for data analysts too, but machine learning specifically, AI is handling some of those things. And so it's making it a little bit easier to run concurrent models and test a lot of different models at the same time. And it's making it a little bit easier. So no, I don't think machine learning is crazy and is super important to learn at the moment. Well, I'm just going through. Can I tell you how AI works? I don't think anybody can tell you how AI works, man. It's just a black box. No, there's a lot of videos out there on how AI works. I've watched a lot of them, but I'm not an expert in AI. So I'm not gonna stand here and try to walk you through something I'm like, I kind of understand. But AI is super fascinating, AI. Oh, somebody just made a donation. You don't have to do that. Football Fanatic. Hey, Alex, laid off from a company with 2 years experience. Really sorry to hear that. I want to switch to data analytics. I have the required skills, so how can I approach things to get a job? Thanks for your awesome content. Yeah, you're really happy to hear it's been helpful, but I'm really sorry to hear you lost your job. I get it. So a lot of people have been in your shoes, and it sounds like you came from a different domain, is my guess. So I'm going to use the experience that I'm just super familiar with, but it's applicable to a bunch of other areas. I worked with a lot of doctors, nurses, nurse techs, all different people in healthcare who had the domain knowledge. After 2 or 3 years, they're like, man, I don't like doing this, or I've been in this for 5 years and it's not what I want to do. I like the data side of things. I want to transition. Use that experience. Use your 2 years of experience in whatever domain you have and find jobs or companies that would value that experience. For example, when I was applying for data analyst jobs, I had worked in hospitals. I had interned in hospitals. I had, a degree healthcare related. And I used that to apply to healthcare analytics companies. And then that healthcare background really set me apart from other people because I understood the data. And so if you understand how things work in the real world, when you get on the data side, it's super helpful and that's very valuable. So my recommendation was take your resume and see how you can showcase your knowledge of the data of the experience that you do have. I have seen it, and people, once they change their resume to be more like that, it's done wonders for people. I've worked with people who are in pharmaceuticals. Or people who are pharmacists. I've worked with people who are doctors, who are nurses. In my mentorship program that I had like 2 years ago, and all of them were able to get jobs. Every single one. I don't think there was ever one that didn't. Were able to get a job as a data analyst because of that experience. So you want to use it. That's my biggest recommendation. Just reading through questions. Which industry is best for a data analyst? There's a lot of great industries. I would say the biggest ones that you're going to have the best chance of landing a job in are things like healthcare, which is never going away, banking, which is never going away. Yeah, I would like finance. Finance is a great one. Big tech is a good one, and there's a lot of jobs in it, but it's hard to get. So like Amazon, so those consumer type companies, so Amazon, Tesla, Walmart, Target, they hire a lot of data analysts. They can just be a little bit more difficult to get into. That's my experience. Do you use ChatGPT in your daily work? Yes and no. I use AI pretty often for actual data analysis, and then also I got Copilot now, and I've tried it out. I'm actually not a huge fan of Copilot. I made a video on that. It just, it wasn't super helpful to me. It'll be like that. Some AI things are like helpful for like the layman who don't know what they're doing, but it was super slow. And so for me, it was like slowing down my workflow a lot. ChatGPT speeds up my workflow in certain areas. And so yes, I definitely use it. Maybe not every day, but several times a week I'm using it for different projects or different research or different code that I'm writing. And so very, very helpful. Ooh, I'm starting to catch up on questions. I don't think I skipped a bunch. Good. Hi, Alex. Do you prefer a boring job or a fancy, high-paying job? I mean, is the fancy, high-paying job not boring? Because I'll go with that one. I definitely would take that one. Oh yeah, I think I skipped a bunch of questions by accident. I hate when that happens. I'm really sorry, guys. But Jalego said, would I prefer a boring job or a fancy, high-paying job? The high-paying job, even if it's more difficult. Yeah, because boring jobs are boring. I can't work in a boring job. Let me scroll back up. I skipped a bunch of questions. This is an interesting question. It said, this is from OG Gamers. Hey, Alex, should I leave a job and search for a data analyst role or stay here half dedicated? I would stay in your current role. Don't just quit and, financially ruin yourself. Keep your current job, but while you're in that job, start applying, start, building your resume, building your portfolio, trying to reach out to recruiters. Like, money is important. This economy is not easy. So yeah, don't just quit your job. I don't recommend it. Hari asks, I have an opportunity to work as a requirement gathering and construct Power BI dashboard. I don't think that's a job title. I think it's like what they're going to be doing, but I'm not aware about it. Could you give insights and throw some light on it? At our company, we had Power BI developers. That's literally what their job title was. I would work them all the time to take our data and visualize it. So at my last company, give me one sec. At my last company, where I was a data analyst and then a manager of analytics, is we had Power BI developers who, once we did all of our work, did all of our analysis, cleaned all the data, did all that top stuff, then we would work with the developers to visualize it, and they would work with on the pipelines and stuff like that. So if you can work on stuff like that, highly recommend it, because it is not easy. It's not as easy as it looks. And so if you can work with requirement gathering and then building Power BI dashboards, and that's your full job, do it. That's a great gig. Highly recommend it. Someone said, yes, come through, wife. Absolutely. Absolutely. How does a BI analyst differ from a business analyst? BI stands for business intelligence, and then data analyst for the data analyst. So it's just BI analyst versus a data analyst. Very company dependent. I've seen it where BI analysts are basically data analysts. Business analysts tend to be, business intelligence analysts tend to be more on the visualization side. Or sometimes they're more like a business analyst. It very depends on the company. I've seen a lot of different variations to this. And so look at the job description, because if it's more working with client-facing stuff or gathering requirements and then working with the team, that's a business analyst. It's not as much digging into the data, working with SQL and all that stuff. If it's a true kind of business intelligence analyst, you're gonna be doing a lot of visualization at most companies. Oh, I got a donation. Thank you so much. You did not, you guys don't have to do that. I'll answer your question. Says, sir, what will be the future of AI and data science? Is it a threat for data analysts? As of right now, genuinely, it's not a threat to data analysts. And I made a full video on that if you want to go watch a full video breaking down exactly what I think is going to change, exactly what I think the future is of it. As of right now, where everything is with AI, even up till today, data analysis has a long future. The reason being is any company in the world has data, and you can use AI on that data. It's not crazy hard. Getting good insights is hard, and understanding the data is hard. In the future, data analysts will still be here. A lot of it will be working with AI, I'm sure, 5 years down the road for sure, because we're working on a lot of integrations, or a lot of people are working on integrations with AI. So you're going to be working with AI. There's no doubt about it, but it's not going to replace the data analyst. What it's going to do is there's going to be some basic insights that people can ask, but they're going to get that basic insight and they're going to be like, that doesn't seem right. And they're going to ask it certain questions, follow-up questions, and then they're going to be like, okay, I need to bring this to someone who knows what they're doing. That's where the data analyst is going to be. And they're going to be like, okay, here's what it's saying. Let's dig into the data and uncover and figure out what they're doing, because AI is not going to be able to do is not going to be able to do everything. And the average person isn't going to be able to get the insights that they want as deep as they want in the real world. Now, with the sample data set, AI can do a great job, but that's like Kaggle data. It's curated, it's simple, it's easy. In the real world, it's 100 times more difficult. And so I don't see it as a big threat. I mean, let me replace this. Oh, let me rephrase it. Certain jobs will be changed over time. Data analysts, data scientists, data engineers, database developers, everything. It's going to change over time. If you are, you stick with it, you learn the basics, how to use all these tools that are really common, Python, Tableau, SQL, Excel, you're going to be using those things with AI in the future. I'm just positive about it. But the biggest difference is understanding the data really well, understanding the business issues that your business is facing, understanding what the clients need, and using AI to help you with that. And there's going to be a limitation to AI always. It's not just going to be like a black box where it's going to give you everything you need. So there's always going to be human intervention needed. And like I said, it's pretty easy, even years ago before AI, just to like get simple insights with different tools, different aggregation tools, or things like that. And those have been around for a lot longer than AI has been in the public sphere. And so I think as things go along, things are going to change, but they're not going to be gone. The rise of an AI analyst, you'll see that in the future for sure. I've already seen job titles like that. Let's see. Learning domain knowledge seems like one of the perks of data analysis. You have to learn domain knowledge as you are a data analyst, because it's just, you're working so closely with the data. And if you're inquisitive, if you're really interested in your actual job, it's going to lead to 1,000 more questions, because you find this little issue, this discrepancy, and you're like, okay, how did this get here? Then you follow the rabbit hole back to another table. Okay, well, that data pipeline did this transformation, but it shouldn't have. And then the reason it shouldn't have done that is from a different pipeline where you ingested the data from this and this view. And it's like you're like a detective, genuinely. There are times where I felt like a detective in my job, where I'm like, man, this is really tough, really complex, and I love it. It's just super, super interesting. Is pandas alone sufficient for data analysis, or we need to focus on other libraries like NumPy, Matplotlib, etc.? Pandas is not enough. It's like only knowing SQL. SQL alone I don't think SQL alone is enough. Pandas is great for using the Python language to manipulate large data sets. And I've used it at my actual work in my job for many years, and it was awesome. I love it, especially for certain use cases. But I don't know if that's enough just by itself. Maybe it's some jobs in the world, it'll be enough. But it's just most likely not going to be the only tool you use. So no, I wouldn't recommend just learning pandas, although I have a great pandas course on Analyst Builder. Let's see. All right, I'm scrolling back down because I went back because I accidentally skipped forward. What's the job market look like right now for data? Not amazing. Noe Barrientos. It's not amazing. There are still a lot of companies hiring. And I would say look local if you can, if you're in like a place where there are local jobs. Any major metropolitan area in the world is going to have a market for it. Try to find local recruiters. That's a big advantage to living like near a metropolitan area. If you're applying online right now, online jobs are crazy. I've seen like within 24 hours, some jobs get like 2,000 applications. Now, a lot of those are like really bad applicants who don't have a portfolio, their resume is junk. And just to give you also a little bit of insight, on LinkedIn, if somebody clicks the apply button, that counts as an application in LinkedIn. It doesn't mean the person actually went onto the website and applied. So there could be 2,000 people who clicked on it, but only 150 people actually applied. Just a little tidbit of information for you. That may be helpful for some of you when you're seeing those numbers, because it is like shocking. But let's see. Okay, I saw a question and then my thing skipped down. I apologize. All right, give me a sec. People are spamming. My mods aren't here today. Gotta put people in timeouts. You hate to see it. When people start spamming, you hate to see it. Which career is going to be more safe in an AI world, data analyst or data engineer? I think they're actually both going to be safe for different reasons. Data engineers are really important for getting the data from one place to another. You need domain knowledge, but believe it or not, data analysts work a lot with data. Data engineers work a lot with data analysts to do a lot of data validation. That's what I worked on for many years. I was on a data collection team at that Fortune 500 company. We worked on data collection. I worked with data engineers, database developers, and my role was very useful. I know for a fact that those data engineers did not want to do what I did, and I didn't really want to do 100% of what they did. And so there's this balance between no one person wants to do the other person's job. That's why they're separate jobs. And so I think both are actually going to be needed. The market for data is going to increase exponentially over the next 10 years. You'll see every company in the world is going to have to use data with AI in some way, or most. And so you're going to see a lot of new jobs and new companies coming up and popping up and transforming. They're like, hey, we need a data analyst to use AI because now we're an AI-focused company. We need someone who knows AI and who knows how to analyze data. Opportunities are going to be there, I promise. I promise. How Azure Databricks plays a major role for a data analyst. Databricks is awesome. Let me just look up, because I use Databricks for a year. I'm just going to look up what the textbook definition of Databricks is for you. Oh, there's not a definition. Let me say, let me look this up, because I'll tell you how I used it. It says Databricks is a cloud data platform that helps to store large amounts of data, structured and unstructured data, in a way that makes it easy to get insights. All right, that wasn't helpful. I was going to say that too. All right, so here's how I use Databricks. When we were using, I used it for about 2 years in a production environment where, and just to take a tiny sidestep, Databricks is can be used with a lot of different platforms. You don't have to use it in Azure, but it's because it's kind of its own standalone thing. But Databricks is great for working with a large amount of data. Now, what I use for that is something called PySpark, which is a Python you can use to retrieve the data different languages, but I liked PySpark because it was Python-like, but for Spark. And so you can work with massive amounts of data that sit in a data lake, and it can be structured or unstructured, like it said, which means the data doesn't have to be sitting in columns and rows. It can be sitting in a JSON file, and you can go and you can retrieve that data and work with that data really, really fast for huge amounts of data. And so sometimes it's not always cost effective to store all of your data in something like a database or even a data warehouse. Sometimes you just want to collect files and drop them in and store them in, it depends, like cold storage where you're not going to be using it a lot, or if you're using it for a lot of different procedures and jobs and you keep it in like a hot storage or not even in hot or cold. But all I have to say is that's what Databricks is good for. And we used it a lot with JSON files, HTML files. What's that file type? I can't remember. But really great in conjunction with our Azure, because we had a data lake that we would drop a lot of data into for different data that we were collecting. And so you don't want to have to repurpose it, put it and store it in a database, because that's gonna be a lot more expensive. And when I say expensive, I mean you're using a cloud-based platform, so you're paying for storage. The difference in cost is dramatic. It's astonishing how much it would cost to convert that, let's just say JSON files. Let's say we had you know, a billion rows worth of data that could be in a database, but it was in a JSON file. It could be the difference between a monthly cost of like $100 just for that data in a database versus like $1 in sitting in like a data lake in certain types of storage. So it's dramatic. It is dramatic. And so that's why things like Databricks exist. But there's a lot more you can do with Databricks. There's a lot more you can do with Databricks. That's just for data analysis. That's most likely what you'll be using it for, is to access data, connect to data. All right, let's scroll down. Let me see. This is a good question. Will the demand for data scientists increase instead of decrease as data analyst? 2, in the market, is it easier to find a job that pays more in Europe or United States? All right, number 2, I know for a fact, United States pays more than any other country in the world. Or the average. I mean, maybe Canada, but it's hard to find a job in Canada. It's just more expensive, so they have higher prices in Canada. But United States is going to pay the best almost all around, typically, and it's easier to find a job there, typically. Will the demand for data scientists increase or decrease? Really hard. I don't think it's hard to say in terms of increase, decrease. I just think things are going to change. Data scientists, I think, is actually, their job might change more than a data analyst because their job is more related to the things that AI is doing under the hood, which is a lot of the machine learning, neural networks, AI. That's kind of that data science realm, whereas analytics is not 100% under that thing. But data scientists are going to be necessary. They're just going to, I think, do the work differently. You know what I mean? But there's definitely going to be a demand for it. So I would probably say increase. I just don't, the data science market is not what I know the most of. Just for pun, what stuff do I need to learn so that I can predict trends for a certain market? Predictions are super interesting. I like predicting out based off things. The thing about predictions, let's just take a visualization software, for example. Let's do Tableau. Tableau takes the data set and it uses machine learning models, and it says, okay, historically, here's what's happened. It's gone up, down, up, down, up, down. And then it says project forward. Well, you know what it's going to project forward based off historical trends and seasonal trends? Basically the exact same thing. What you have to do in order to change that is you have to introduce data that you believe is going to influence the markets in the future. So how do you do that? You have to take into account a lot of outside factors that are not part of your data set, because you're projecting forward into a data set that you don't have. So you have to take into account economic policies. You have to take it, depending on whatever data, but the economy, economic policies, wars around the world, pandemics. These are things that these models can't predict. They're never going to predict COVID. So in 2020 or 2019 of June, they're forecasting out the next year, looks totally normal. But then, of course, COVID hit and it changed everything. So you have to really know in depth a lot of the outside factors or variables that are going to impact your data that aren't accounted for in the data itself, right? And that's tough to do. It is really tough to do. So you have to really know your domain well. That's where that domain knowledge is crazy important. That's why people who aren't as technical will get promoted higher, because they just know the industry so well and so in depth that their technical knowledge isn't like what they're really used for. Their value is from knowing all the variables and how they're going to impact their business and how to account for them. So doing predictions, it can be quite difficult accurately. Let's see. Web words wave. This is an interesting question. I don't know much about indexing. I indexed some of the important columns a couple months ago, and the total data was 100K. Now it's about 150K. Should I re-index the table? So indexing in a database refers to optimizing the query performance based off of a specific, sorry, my wife texted a group chat. Sorry, wife, if you're listening, I can't answer right now. Indexing refers to optimizing a certain column or columns for querying purposes. I cover indexing in my MySQL Advanced course on Analyst Builder, and it walks through all of it. And really what it does is just for an example, let's say you have you have 100,000 or 150,000 rows. If it's a wide table and a lot of rows, if you're trying to query all of it, that's not a, I guess it depends what you're doing with it. Actually, 100,000 can be a lot if you're processing it, cleaning it, doing other processes. And so let's say you have a query that cleans the data. What you can do is you can create indexes on that data specific to that data cleaning process, and it can speed it up dramatically. You usually create indexes for certain scenarios. So for that data cleaning, let's say you're cleaning one column of data. It's a really in-depth cleaning, and so you have to multiple processes, and it takes a long time. You can index on it, and it will process it on the back end before, and it'll use that index in the query. And usually they have index optimizers built in to a lot of most database management systems. And so it'll choose which index is going to perform best with that query, and it'll help speed up that data cleaning process dramatically. Sometimes it can take it from like an hour to like 5 minutes. That's the difference an index can make. And so if you have data and then you have new data, do you need to re-index? Most of the time, yes. When you have new data sets, you want to re-index it if you want to do that whole process on that new data. Now you won't, yeah, it depends, and it depends on how you're transforming the data. So if you're putting all the data into one, then you're cleaning it, you want that index on that data. But if you're just doing it on the subsection of data and then appending that data or putting it into the already clean data, you probably don't. It just depends on your process. There's so many variables to how you index and what you need to index on. Oh, Ernest, I appreciate your comment. He just said, "Hey, Alex, Ernest here. Just want to say I'm learning a lot from your channel. Keep up the great work." Thanks, man. I'm really glad. I hope you really are learning a lot. Let's see. I have Akrimi said, I have a synthetic data generated, but after more random data to it with some requirement, I see that the data isn't well correlated. Is there a solution for that, please? Yeah, synthetic data generation is pretty new. I've only used it a handful of times, so I'm not really familiar with that exact scenario, if I'm being honest. But you know, the synthetic data is like, you could even say like ChatGPT creates synthetic data. You just ask it to, here's a columns, here's how many rows I want, generate some data, and it generates some synthetic data. And there are companies out there now that you can pay or that have it integrated into their systems where you can say, hey, here's my current data set. I want you to create a projection for the future based off of a scenario. Let's say if the housing market crashes and then the stock market crashes, create synthetic data that would replicate what might happen to XYZ in that scenario. And then it's supposed to create it. I just don't know that scenario, so I can't help with that a lot. I'm sorry. Oh, it skipped down again. When is my Tableau course coming? It's with my editor right now. He said it should be done in about 3 weeks. So in about 3 weeks, I'll release that on analystbuilder.com. It goes like 100% more in depth than my free Tableau series on YouTube with some awesome projects that I literally is like exactly what I did in my job using Tableau and Power BI, like real scenarios. That's going to be a really good course. Is cloud the future of data analytics and data engineering? Are cloud certifications like AWS and Azure or Salesforce going to enhance the resume of a data analyst? It's a few different questions in there, but in general, yes. The future of data analytics, and a lot of it's in the cloud. Now, I just did a webinar with Career Foundry like a month or two ago. Something that I've seen, and I do a lot of consulting now, so something that I've seen a lot of companies doing now is actually taking their data off-prem. The reason for that is they have a huge dependency on AWS or Azure or Google Cloud. If one of those goes down, and they've seen these issues, then their services no longer work. Their processes, their products, they don't work. I have a dependency on AWS. Analyst Builder sits on top of AWS. If AWS goes down, I have a dependency on that. I can't afford to buy my own servers and run everything off of it, nor do I want to really maintain that myself. There's an easeability with cloud platforms that a lot of companies like. And a lot of startups, it's cheaper upfront cost. And so a lot of companies get into that ecosystem and then they just stay there because it's easier, not because it's cheaper or better. With on-prem servers, there's a lot of people going to on-prem servers where they have to then maintain the servers. They have to know how to use the servers. Like at one of my previous jobs, we had on-prem servers, and we had a guy who was our DBA, our database administrator. He maintained those actual servers, physical servers. And so, there's a kind of a divide growing and a lot of people going both ways, but cloud is here to stay for as long, and prices are going to increase. That's another thing with the cloud is prices are ever increasing. Your bill is never going to go down, most likely. On-prem servers, you pay an upfront cost, which is hefty, but then over time, it dramatically is less. So a lot of companies are hedging their bets in a way. Are there certifications? Yeah. Certifications for things like AWS and Azure are actually pretty good. And I think they will be more useful in future years. So like data analyst, AWS and Azure certifications they are real things and they're good. I took the Azure one myself. My company paid for it. And it was really good. I learned a lot. And that was 4 years ago. It was really good. I really enjoyed it. I learned a lot from it. How programming polyglot, which I believe means you speak many languages. So that's a neat name. How important is domain knowledge for the first job? Is it advantageous? Wait, what time is it? 11:30. I'll go until maybe noon. But I was going to stop at 11:30. Is it advantageous as a data analyst to be well-versed in finance and accounting if you plan on working in that sector? Absolutely. Domain knowledge actually is harder to learn than I would say like something like SQL. Because domain knowledge is there's a lot to it. You can learn the basics, and then to really know a domain, learn a domain, it's like it takes many years. Whereas SQL, you can pick up the basics of SQL in like a couple weeks. But then to learn the advanced stuff in SQL could take many, many months or even years. And so I think domain knowledge is extremely, extremely important and extremely advantageous. Now, if you have knowledge in accounting or finance beforehand, absolutely. But it's only useful to companies that value that skill. So you don't want to go to a healthcare or data analyst job and be like, hey, I worked in finance, I have domain knowledge. It's not useful. Not useful. How to analyze complex report to write SQL statement. How to analyze a complex report. You mean like a report that's coming from SQL, like a job that's like an automated job? I'm going to assume that's what you mean. I'm not 100%. How to analyze a complex report. Oh, do you mean, maybe it means ingesting the data into SQL and then analyzing it? Hard to say. I'm going to go off on a tangent if that's not the case, because this is an interesting topic, which is generating reports with SQL. And super awesome thing to know how to do. You can create automated processes where you're spitting out files and dropping them places and ingesting files. It's a whole thing. Very complex, but extremely useful. And so what I used to work on with my data collection team is we would have a creative process. Usually the data engineer would do most of it, create the process for ingesting the data. I would come in for a lot of the transformation pieces. So a lot of the data cleaning, a lot of the filtering, filtering out data we didn't need, getting like our core data that we're going to then use. And then we would write all these different queries, aggregations, use a lot of window functions. And then we'd get that final view. I'll call it a view because sometimes we would put it in a view. Here's the final view. After we join all these different tables together, do all these different things, we have it in a view, and that data they want as like a weekly output. So then we automate a job that says, take that data after it's done refreshing. We have a process where it refreshes all the data, updates that view. Then we take the view or that data, put it into a CSV. We put it into an SFTP, which is a secured file, some secure file. I can't remember the acronym. And they could then go and pick it up, right? That's the process that would happen for all these different things that we were working on. And so I don't know if that's what you're asking, but that's what you can do with SQL. It's extremely powerful. Why should we use Power BI after, wait. Why we use Power BI after cleaning and visualizing data? I don't understand that question, I'm sorry. Oh boy. Got someone spamming. Yep, gotta hide you. Sorry. My mods aren't here, so I'm doing it today. Feels really personal. Feels really personal right now. When are you doing training on cloud, AWS, Azure? Great question. I'm going to be doing a free series on my YouTube channel covering the basics of using AWS and Azure. I have extensive experience with both, especially as a data analyst. So I'll talk a really good free series on my YouTube channel for people to start with. I'm going to be making a full course. That's my next course that I'm making. So I'm starting it like next week. It'll hopefully be ready in like 2 months, but I have it all planned out already. I just got to, do it. A full course on the basics, intermediate, and a little bit more of the advanced stuff in Azure first, and then AWS. It's all one course, but I'm just going to organize it like that. So that'll be ready. That series, both of those things will be ready probably in like 2 months, month and a half, 2 months, but it's going to be awesome. It's going to be a really good, extremely useful, especially because I found that people struggle with using cloud platforms. They are a little bit more difficult than using like a database management system like MySQL, Microsoft SQL Server. They're a little bit more complex. There's a lot of several other things that people aren't used to. And so I'll go into all that stuff. It'll be really helpful. Jalego said, "Hey, Alex." I think it's how you pronounce it. I don't know. "Hey, Alex, I would like to work in the US after my graduate program. Which majors would you recommend, computer science or statistics?" Either are great. I think computer science is a great, if I could go back, all right, Alex, beginning of college, didn't go for, nursing or becoming a doctor, then switching over to physical therapy, and then switching to recreational therapy, and then now I have a degree in recreational therapy. If I could go back, I would choose computer science, 100%. That's what I would choose. Claudia said, "Thank you for the great content, Alex. Is it possible to work as a data analyst remotely for the US? I live in Argentina. Thanks." Yes, it is possible. Earlier, I was talking about how you can do freelancing on things like Fiverr, Upwork, or other platforms like that. That is a good way to kind of get some experience. And you kind of can place bids for different jobs. You have to be pretty active on the website. The other thing is working for consulting companies like Accenture, TCS, and there are a bunch of other consulting companies as well. They hire from usually companies that are a little bit cheaper, and then they market so that, let's say they pay, someone, let's say Argentina, I don't know the conversion rates over there, but they'll pay you $20 an hour in USD, but they're charging the client $85 an hour, and so there's a larger margin. Whereas if you were a consultant in America, they charge $50 an hour, and then 85 to the client or 90 to the client. They make a lot less profit margin. So in other countries, they do that a lot with consulting companies. And that's what I did when I was a hiring manager. We had a team of 7. 3 of them were full-time employees in the United States. 4 of them were consultants through Accenture and then TCS and then one other consulting company. And all around the world, Lithuania, India, Australia. Did I say India already? And so that's what I would recommend. Oh, that's a good question. How can someone transition from data analyst role to a data architecture role? Now, the reason I think this is interesting is I worked with several data architects back in the day, and I found their job fascinating. It's very challenging. It's somewhat, it's different than data engineering, but it's similar technical abilities. And data architecture is actually really important, and often that gets lumped in with data engineering. Is they're like, hey, build out these schemas, build out our data architecture for how our database is going to sit. And so sometimes those positions are combined or interchangeable. But if you have a dedicated data architect, which I used to work with, they are working with building out databases for scale. It's easy for you and I to get sample data sets, put it into a MySQL database, and it's free. It's running on your computer. It's super simple. When you start working with millions or billions of rows of data, the data architecture, if it's good or bad, could be the difference between things taking hours to run or minutes to run. It could be the difference between a huge bill for your cloud service or whatever service you're using, or a small one, or things breaking all the time and customers being really upset or not breaking all the time. Very important job. So you really need to I would say partner up with a data engineer, a database developer, a data architect to understand what their role does and then go try to replicate it. It's pretty complex. It's pretty neat job. All right, guys, I'm gonna do this for about maybe 10 more minutes, maybe 15 more minutes. And then believe it or not, I got to do some of my actual work. But I like hanging out with you guys. This is always fun to me. I Tiaz said, hello, Alex. I'm from Indonesia. Your video really helps me in teaching my students. I'm so happy to hear that. I love hearing that. That's one of my favorite things is when people use my videos to help other people. There was a guy who reached out to me, said he was teaching a group of kids at his local library, coding, like Python coding. And he was using my lessons for their lessons. And just really heartwarming. So if you're out there, hey, really appreciate it. But he's like, they were doing my calculator video. So building a calculator with Python, like things that kids would be able to do or understand like the concept of a calculator. And so it was really, really neat. Really, really neat. All right, let me see. Which Python course for data analyst do you recommend? There's a lot of great ones out there on Udemy. Jose Portilla has a really good one. I have my own now. So if you like how I teach, you go on analystbuilder.com. I have 2 courses, Python for beginners, which teaches you from beginner to like intermediate, slightly advanced stuff like web scraping, regular expression. It's going to teach you everything you need to know about Python. Then I have a pandas for data analysis course. That's everything you need to know about using pandas in the actual workplace for data analysis. So I would recommend, I mean, if I'm being, not to promote myself here, but it's a great course. Probably one of the better ones out there. And so I do recommend that one. There's a link I think I put in the description. Yeah, analystbuilder.com. There you go. Let me see. Let me see. I'm just reading through questions. Some of these I've already answered, so I have to like filter through. This is a good question. He said, hi, Alex. Which courses do you recommend, Coursera or Udemy? And if Coursera, for example, Google or IBM? So here's what I'll say. There's a lot of resources out there. And the Google Data Analyst Certificate is really a lot more, I took that one myself. It doesn't go as in-depth as I would hope to go for the technical side, although you learn a lot about what data analysts do. And then they have the advanced course, which is just the Python essentially. IBM's one is actually quite good. It's very Python focused. And so if you're looking for an all-in-one, I have my free data analyst bootcamp on YouTube, which I would say is better than both of those. But Udemy, if you're looking for individual skills at a cheap price, Udemy is fantastic. Like if you're wanting to learn Power BI, you can go get a Power BI course. I have my own platform now with all my own courses. So if you want to go check those out, those are on analystbuilder.com. And one thing I will say, and I'm not going to toot my own horn here, I actually am, is Analyst Builder has a built-in integrated coding platform. So as you're taking the course, as you're learning Python, you get to practice Python in the course. All these other courses on Coursera and Udemy, it's not as easy to use on Coursera, but then on Udemy, they don't have that at all. And so I think it's a better learning experience. You learn a lot easier and it's more fun because it's me teaching. It's just more fun. I'm more fun. That's what I'm trying to say. Let's keep going. Hi, Alex. I'm a musician and would like to apply for music data analyst. I've never heard of that. I'm just starting to learn data. Can you recommend music topics shareholders companies would be interested to see? Is that like for like a music company, like a record label? Because I don't know anything about that domain. I'm sorry. I don't. Really, that's super interesting. I've never heard of a music data analyst. That's really neat. I'll have to look that up. Ramanuj Laxman said, what about Microsoft Excel for data analysis? It is important for data analyst aspirants to focus on. Yes. I think that's like a default. Like you need to know it. Like if you don't know it, it's suspicious. It's like, how do you not know Excel? I have a full Excel course out there on data analyst, and I have a free Excel everything. I have full courses for things, and I do recommend people looking at those because it goes a lot more in depth. But on my YouTube channel, I have a free playlist. Go check out the playlist. It goes over, formatting and pivot tables and functions and all sorts of stuff. Highly recommend taking the free one. But the full course goes a lot more in depth. Claudia, you're most welcome. She said, thanks. I'm guessing it's a girl, but says, thanks for your answer, Alex. I really appreciate it. You're most welcome. Kirill. Hi, Alex. Can we expect some discount sale on your courses bundle during this year? Yes. Yeah. I usually do. The platform's only been out for about 5 months, and we've done 3 sales. And so, yeah, we definitely will. But you can even use code AB20 off for analystbuilder.com. I'm not trying to be like huge promotion. People are just asking, but that's a 20% off any purchase for Analyst Builder. Let's see. Oh boy, don't start spamming, Milad. I'm putting you in a timeout, but I'll answer your question. I'm not happy about it. He was just asking where can you get sources for data. I actually have a whole video on best places to get data sets. I have a whole video on it, so go check that out. But Kaggle's a good one for when you're first starting out for simple data sets. Then I recommend going for like local government data sets because that stuff is messy. And it's more accurate to real life data. And so it's really challenging. And so you go to like data.gov, which is the United States government website on data. I pull data from there that I'm like really interested in. And I look at it, I'm just like, man, the government has such bad data. It's so good. It's so good for all this dirty data. That sounds wrong how I'm saying it, but it's like in a good way. I feel like I said that weird. Let's see. This is a good question. Karam Shazad said, for beginners, do you recommend that they learn on their own or enroll in course led by industry professionals so they can act as mentors? I don't fully recommend most, like if you're looking at like a boot camp, boot camps are super expensive. They're gonna be like $5,000-$10,000 US. If you have the money and the time, then do it because it could be really helpful. But in general, I think most people can self-learn. That's why I created the Data Analyst Bootcamp on YouTube, is because people can self-learn for free. I've literally had hundreds of thousands of people take that. And I really do think it's just a great way to learn. And you need to be able to self-learn a little bit. As a data analyst, as anyone working in tech, like you need to be able to research things, learn things on your own, because you're not always gonna find like a perfect resource for it or have a mentor to explain it to you. So yeah, I think most people should start out with free resources like on YouTube or other free places to get stuff, then kind of graduate towards some more advanced courses and then try to build your own projects. That's where you really stretch yourself, but you need to know the core concepts before you start building things. Lewis said, hey Alex, love your content. Just a quick question. I'm currently undecided between entering the workforce for data science or head into grad school immediately after undergrad. Any advice? That's a super personal question. Really depends on what you want to do. But if you're my son, Lewis, right now you're my son, and you're looking at me, and I'm looking into your eyes, and I'm gonna highly recommend. I'm gonna say, in 2 years, is 2 years of a master's degree going to be worth 2 years in the field? My answer is no. It is not. Now, maybe down the line, if you want to get like a VP of data science role, maybe your education might come into play. But even then, times are changing. I had a degree in recreational therapy. I'm thinking over here getting promoted to operational analytics manager in charge of 7 people in a whole department, and they had plans for my future. I mean, no, none of that had anything to do with my degree. It had to do with my domain knowledge and my experience, and I was good at my job. And so I think that 2 years in a job, if you could get a job right away, 2 years in a job is, you're going to learn 2, 3, 4 times as much in that time, and you'll have a real experience to get your next job. If you were my son, Lewis, or Louis, I don't know if that's how you say it, that's exactly what I would say. Let me see. This is an interesting question. Vashu Verma said, Hi, Alex. I'm a developer. I want to learn data analyst. Is the right time to learn due to the recession? Not getting any growth as a developer. What should I do? Experience in dev, but want analyst. What kind of you like what kind of developer? Because developer is very broad. Let's say it could be a database developer, a web developer. I'm just like there's different types of developer. I'm just gonna say you're technical. You're pretty technical with programming languages then. Um, that's a really good point to transition to. It's actually quite easy or easier to make that transition because you have in-depth programming knowledge. And there are some jobs that really require good at programming. But I would just learn. I mean, usually when you're a developer, you know a lot about. You don't know as much about the analytics piece, but you know the coding piece. So it's getting into the mind of an analyst and how you look at data. So taking courses, I would just start with taking courses, talk to some data analyst. As a developer, you most likely have worked with several companies who have data analysts at them. You can always reach out to them, say, hey, I'm transitioning into analytics. Do you guys have any openings for that? So if you have experience, and especially in the tech world, that's what I would do. Hi, Alex. What is ETL and where can I learn more? This is from Yaboa. Good question. ETL stands for extract, transform, load. So it's a process where you're extracting data from a data source, transforming it, and then you're loading it into your database. There's also there's a lot of different processes, but another popular one is the extract, load. So you extract it, load it into the database, and then you transfer it after. So ELT versus ETL. But really what that is it's just creating automated systems or called data pipelines from a data source. Let's say a client has a database over here. Every day, every month, every whenever, you're extracting the data, you're cleaning it, formatting it how it needs to be formatted before or after. But then for the ELT, you're loading and then transforming it. But we did a lot of ETL. So you transform the data to make it what you need it, and then you load it into your system. And so that's really all it is. It can be done in a lot of different programs. There's a lot of companies that do only ELT, ETL stuff. Or you can do it all yourself and write the code for it in like SQL, Python, Spark. There's a lot of different stuff you can do. So Swarupa Yadav said, hi, Alex, just curious questions. How is your journey building Analyst Builder platform? Let me see. I don't want this to be my last question because again, I'm not trying to make this an Analyst Builder focus, but it's an interesting question. Analyst Builder was an idea that I had about a year and a half, 2 years ago. And my initial concept is I think I'm good at what I do. I like, Leak code and I like courses, and I wanted to combine that into one platform. So I went to some other platforms that I thought would really want to partner with me and kind of help. I could promote their company, they would make money. I could make money, and it would just be a really novel idea. And they turned me down. And they were like, no, it's not what we want for our company. And I was like, totally get it, totally understand, really appreciate it. You guys are great at what you do. So then I was like, heck, I'm just gonna build it myself. So I got a team. I work with an amazing team who are a bunch of database developers, web developers, they're called front-end engineers, back-end engineers. They're just amazing. And we created the whole platform from scratch, essentially. And we hosted in AWS. We use Vimeo for hosting, but in authentication, we use some authentication stuff. Everything else is pure code. And so we use a lot of GitHub, AWS. But I'm telling you right now, because again, when you build things, you just learn. I've learned more about software engineering than I ever knew about it. I feel like I could become a software engineer. If my friend Kasoon took me under his wing, I could become a software developer, software engineer. So it was awesome, but it took over a year to make it. And at the beginning, it was a little rocky. We had some issues with logging in, and that was our beta phase, and some courses weren't working exactly right, or the output wasn't working right. But we had our beta testers do it, and now it's in an amazing place. We have like 10,000 monthly active users who are using it every single month. And we have like 200, 300 people signing up every day. And so people are really learning it and using it and liking it. So it's very awesome. I love it. It's awesome. How important is it to get good at SQL and Python nowadays with ChatGPT? Juan, that's a great question. Here's what I'll say from my experiences. I've been using ChatGPT almost all last year, and I use it for a lot of work. As someone who has a lot of experience using SQL and using Python at work for my job, I will say that it gets a lot of things wrong or does a lot of things inefficiently. And if you don't know it, you are going to have to trust it because you don't know. And then you're going to try to implement it. It's not going to work. Then you have to go back, try to fix it, ask it questions, and do things. It also has limitations. It doesn't, you can feed it every single piece of information that you want it to know. And even then it's going to get things wrong. And I've seen it 100 times myself, as well as a lot of other people have said the same thing. It is pretty amazing what it can do, especially with the simpler stuff or like code that is out there on the internet. It can really use it and make it custom for what you're doing. So it helps a lot. But I've used it enough and worked with it enough to know that even in the future, it's going to have some limitations. And if you don't know it well, you don't already know it, you're going to be your limitation will be AI. Whereas I'm going to use AI as a tool. My limitation is my own knowledge of the skill and the domain knowledge, which again, AI may not know perfectly, right? And so I still think it is extremely valuable to know those things. And companies are still going to do technical interviews. They're not going to stop doing those. So if you're going to get interviews for a data analyst or data science or data engineering, whatever, you're going to get technical interviews. And so you need to be able to pass those. All right, guys, I got like one or two more questions in me. Then I got to do some I got to do my actual work because I'm just doing this. Someone said, I like your enthusiasm for dirty data. That's funny. That's funny. Oh, that was good. Let me see. I'm just looking for like one or two more questions. That was Amanda who wrote that. That was funny. That made me laugh. This isn't a question, but he said, ooh, happened to be on YouTube during the live. Shh, don't tell my boss. I'm not saying anything. You can be on here as much as you want. Put the volume on low. I used to do that when I had a previous job. It wasn't a tech related job. I was working at a nonprofit and I was like a caretaker. And so I would go on YouTube all the time and I just kept the volume low. And when people would walk in, I'd exit out or something, you know. It was just a boring job. I didn't have anything to do. I'm looking for some good questions at the end. Vincent said, hi, Alex. What are your thoughts on Georgia Tech's OMSA program for someone with no data science and analytics background? You know, I almost enrolled in this myself. I was at my previous job, and it's an online master's for data analytics, basically. But my company had a tuition reimbursement program where they would reimburse me for the tuition I paid for a company or for my education. And so I almost enrolled in that one. And then I got a promotion somewhere. I was like, wait a second. I don't need an education to be successful. You know, in classic me fashion. I was like, education isn't going to do it for me. So I personally didn't get it. I didn't do it. I do think though, for a lot of people, it is a good program. It's cheap. It's with a reputable company. What I will say though, is I've heard that's very difficult. They have a high dropout rate because it's pretty advanced. You need some hands-on experience is what a lot of people said, and which I had at the time, so I thought I could take it. But just be warned, the reviews that I saw was very challenging. All right, I got like one more question. There's Kasoon. He's in here. I didn't know he was watching this. Hey, Kasoon, what time is it there? Oh, it's like 9 o'clock his time. Yeah, he's watching. I was talking about him earlier. He's my, he's the, I would say he's the CTO. He's the technology guy, the genius behind Analyst Builder. I was talking about him earlier. I didn't know he was in here. I should have talked more kindly about him. I'm just kidding. All right, let's see. Got one more question in me. Oh, we got spammers. I gotta block them. Must block. I don't have my usual people in here today. Oh, it's 10:24. Yeah. Yeah, it's getting late there. But I appreciate you joining. Will you add new bundles? Dante Cosmos. This isn't the last question. The answer is yes. We're actually adding roadmaps. That's like we're working on roadmaps right now. Because right now I just have all my courses. But what I want to do is like take this course, these questions, this course, these questions, and really challenge you and have like kind of a guide, kind of like the Data Analyst Bootcamp on YouTube, kind of walks you through exactly what I would learn. We'll have that on the platform in a couple months, hopefully. Let me see. I'm looking for questions. I answered that question. You don't know what question I'm talking about, but I asked it. Okay, here's my last question. Hey, I know, Enoch, I get it. I can't block them all. I blocked some of them. He was talking about the spammers. Last question. This is from Shady. Shady asks, Alex, how can I describe the project I worked with you in my CV? So let's say you go into my Data Analyst Bootcamp, you use those projects, or you go into Analyst Builder, you take those projects, or courses and projects. And I have a full video on YouTube on how to create a data analyst resume. Highly recommend going and watching that because it does talk about this, which is if you don't have any experience, you work at Subway and you have no experience, but you really want to transition in. Here's what I would do. You put your skills at the top, and underneath it, you have a project section. The project section is going to state the project name, maybe when you did it, but in the description, you're going to describe, here is the issue, and here's how I accomplished it, and here's what I used for it. So for example, let's say you did some analysis on the COVID data project, right, on YouTube. You can say, analyze, wanted to see trends over time for infection rates and vaccines that were taken in different countries. So you describe the problem, then you say use SQL to clean, process, and transform, whatever you want to say, the data, and then aggregate and analyze these different things, and then maybe a quick synopsis of here's what I found. There was a 75% increase in vaccinations after this date, or whatever you found in the data. That can be really interesting to somebody. And of course, you want to have a hyperlink on that resume if it's a digital resume. Have a hyperlink on your thing so it takes them to the project that you should have a portfolio. And again, I have a video on how to make a free portfolio. You should have a link to that project where they can go and see it. And then you should have a good outline of your code, what you found, etc. So that's what I would do. And then underneath it, you have your experience and your education, which aren't as important. You want the ones that are useful to them at the top. So that's how I recommend putting it on your resume. With that being said, that was the last question. Unless there's a crazy big question. I don't have time. It's dark. I need it on this screen. It's brighter, and then on YouTube it's not as bright. I apologize for that. I need to make it brighter in here. I just need to open a window. It looks so much better. With that being said, I am out of here. Thank you to my wife for the water. I got to get some work done. I got clients and Analyst Builder stuff and other things like that. If you haven't already, check out Analyst Builder. It has all my courses on it. And you can code on it, do technical questions, prepare for those technical interviews, all that good stuff. And then just shout out to you guys. Really appreciate you guys being here. It's midday where I am, and I'm just taking time out to spend some time with you guys, answer some questions. So if you have any other questions, hit me up on LinkedIn. That's the best place to reach me, I think. Genuinely, I'm behind, like, I caught up to like 500 emails, and now I'm back down to like 2,000 emails I haven't answered. It's bad. It's bad. I need an assistant, but I'm not paying for an assistant. But I need like an assistant to like go through there and like give some generic advice. You know what? AI. I'm just going to use AI to do that. No, I'm not going to do that, guys. But I work through my email. I'll eventually get back to you if you email me. But LinkedIn, I usually get back pretty quick, especially if it's a shorter question. So hit me up with a question over there if you need to reach me. But I really appreciate you guys. Thanks for joining. Thanks for coming. I'll do more of these. I try to do these once a month, but sometimes I just get so busy. I just don't have time. And so I do apologize for that. But I made it happen in February, the very last day of February, 29th. Thank goodness for the leap year. Otherwise, it would have been March 1st. But really appreciate you guys joining and taking your time. With that being said, I am out of here. Bye. Oh, wait, I got to push this.